The screen is pitch black. A single heartbeat thumps against the eardrums. Thump, thump. Time seems to freeze in a thick sludge of lurking death. The shot shifts to super slow motion. A royal banquet table glitters under crystal chandeliers, yet the air is as cold as a stone tomb. Julian Briggs, the young billionaire with a stoic face, slowly raises a silver fork to his lips. On it lies a piece of glossy seared foie gras, but to the viewer it looks like a death warrant plated in gold. Just inches away, Vivian, his fiancée, as beautiful as a Renaissance angel, is smiling. A smile so perfect it is terrifying. Her crimson lips curl slightly, while her slender hand tightens around a hollow flip-top ring. A grain of lethal dust has just been sprinkled. In the darkest corner of the room, Imani, an African-American woman in deep blue cleaning scrubs, stands watching. She is not just cleaning the stains on the floor, she is cleaning the lies of the high society. The phone in her hand trembles, but the lens remains locked on the moment of fate. Her voice rises, slow, heavy, like an echo from deep underground. Don't eat it, I beg of you. That is not the sweetness of success. That is the final aftertaste of your breath, Julian. Why is a man who has everything walking so close to the abyss for just one bite? Look closely at that smile. Do you see the serpent hiding behind those angelic eyes? A week ago, in the frost-chilled wine cellar of his late father, Julian found a secret that should have remained buried forever. A black envelope smelling of moss and betrayal. His father had written in final, jagged strokes before his heart stopped. Son, when the whole world kneels at your feet to cheer, look at the only person who is kneeling to wipe away your filth. Only they can see the rot beneath this velvet carpet. That will was not about money, it was about survival. And now, amidst the melodic classical music and expensive wine, a brutal hunt is underway. The hunter does not use a gun, she uses trust. The most perfect assassination plot in the history of Chicago is counting down every second. Will Julian hear Imani's silent scream, or will he swallow the bitter cup of betrayal? This mystery has only just begun in a place where the line between love and the grave is as thin as a single hair. Welcome to the downfall of the Briggs Empire, where the truth is paid for in blood. This is a story of shadows you cannot afford to miss. If you want to see how the invisible rise to changeable, hit the subscribe button and join our journey into the deep heart of the truth. Stay tuned, because the next turn will leave you breathless. The crystal light seems to dim, making way for a cruelty that is taking a visible and terrifying shape. Vivian strides across the marble floor, the sharp click of her stiletto heels echoing like the countdown to a death sentence. She looks with the raw contempt of one standing atop a mountain of gold. At her feet, Imani is kneeling, her thin up a pool of red wine that looks blood on the pristine white carpet. She places the tip of her diamond-encrusted heel.
Vivian,
Suddenly, onto the back of Imani's hand. It is not an accident. It is an act of possession. A calculated crushing of a human being's dignity. She presses down hard. Slow, so slow, can you hear the faint creak of bone under the weight of pure arrogance? Agony flares in Imani's eyes, but she does not make a sound. She is used to being invisible. Vivian leans down, her breath smelling of expensive wine, but her words more toxic than arsenic. Wipe it clean. Your filthy hands are only fit to be a footrest for me. Do you think Julian even sees you? No. To him, you are just a piece of furniture that moves. A stain he will discard the moment it is no longer useful. Cold sweat pours down Imani's forehead, mingling with the humiliation of a race, a class that has been suppressed for far too long. Why does wealth grant the permission to strip away another person's humanity? Vivian does not know that beneath the dust of those cleaning scrubs, a heart of steel is forging a path to vengeance. This insult does not break Imani. It is the spark that ignites the final fuse of her patience. Look closely at this moment. It is not just a bruise on the flesh. It is the first crack in the crystal vase of the Briggs Empire. When the rich believe they can trample over everything, they forget that the very ground beneath their feet is what keeps them from falling into the abyss. The drama has only just begun as endurance transforms into a silent counterattack. Do not turn away, because the reckoning is coming in a way that no amount of money can ever buy. Every heavy press of that heel is etched into a memory that will soon become a weapon of absolute destruction. The silence in this room is not peace. It is the gathering of a storm that will leave no stone unturned. The truth is right there, pinned under that heel, and it is about to explode into a reality they never saw coming. The screen shifts to the cold, clinical blue of night vision surveillance. The glamorous world of the day has retreated, making way for the ghosts that prowl the shadows of this stone fortress. Imani is no longer kneeling on the floor. She moves like a weightless phantom, her sharp eyes scanning every corner with the precision of a top-tier operative. Can you hear the faint rhythmic clacking of a keyboard? That is the sound of betrayal being digitized. Imani stands in a secret study, the glow from the computer screen reflecting off her stoic face, revealing complex lines of code racing against time. She didn't find love letters. She found forged balance sheets and encrypted files containing every trade secret of the Briggs empire. Vivian doesn't just want Julian's heart. She wants to drain the marrow of this corporation and hand it to a shadowy power lurking in the wings. Slowly, Imani zooms in on a candid photo found in a hidden folder. Vivian is standing next to a stranger in the darkness of a pier, holding a hard drive that contains the fate of thousands of employees. The serpent has revealed itself. It doesn't crawl in the grass. It lies directly on the silk bed of the naive billionaire. This truth is colder than death itself. Vivian is a ruthless economic spy, one who has turned love into a commodity for exchange. Every breath Imani takes grows heavy as she realizes the sheer scale of this conspiracy. This is no longer about petty jealousy. This is a war for survival. How can a woman kiss a man in the morning and sell him out in the evening, without so much as a blink? The frost in Vivian's soul makes the surrounding air feel as if it were freezing solid. Imani tightens her grip on the backup drive in her hand. She knows she is holding the detonator to a social atomic bomb. One wrong move, and she vanishes forever. One right move, and she topples this entire dynasty of lies. Look closely at those numbers that's on the screen. They aren't just currency. They are the evidence of an unforgivable treason. The drama is being pushed to its highest peak as the predator begins to be hunted within her own lair. Do not turn your eyes away from the dark, because in this castle even the walls are beginning to scream their accusations. The truth is slowly surfacing, slimy and full of venom, ready to destroy anyone in its path. And now it is time for the serpent's might to bite its own tail. The stakes have never been higher, and the silence of the night is about to be its own tale. The stakes have never been what is about to be shattered by the sound of an enigma collapsing from within. The screen returns to the warm golden tones of morning light, yet it carries a suffocating tension that is impossible to describe. Vivian stands in the modern kitchen, early sunbeams streaming through the window, transforming her into a radiant angel in a white silk robe. But the hands of this angel are performing a ritual of the devil. Slowly, very slowly, do you see her long, slender fingers holding Julian's blue asthma inhaler? It is his constant companion, his breath, his very life. Vivian gently twists the cap, dropping 3 beads of a colorless liquid inside, a lethal solution she just extracted from those dark files. Not a single sound, only the heartbeat of betrayal thumping incessantly. She smiles, a pure, serene smile directed at the inhaler as if she were granting it a blessing. Julian walks into the dining room, his face shadowed today by an unusual gloom. His eyes no longer hold that fire of passion when he looks at his fiancée. Instead, there is a probing gaze as sharp as a razor. He sits at the banquet table, looking at the dish plated with the precision of a fine work of art. But why does its scent seem slightly off-key today? Julian picks up the inhaler, his fingers tracing the cold plastic. He suddenly remembers Imani's eyes from last night, remembers his late father's warning echoing in his mind. He glances at Vivian. She is standing there, coffee in hand, her eyes filled with a manufactured concern. "Are you feeling unwell, darling?" Her voice is sweet like honey, but Julian feels a jolt of ice run down his spine. He brings the inhaler close to his lips, then abruptly stops. The space seems to solidify. Julian notices a tiny scratch on the cap, a trace of tampering that an ordinary man would never notice. Doubt, like an oil slick, begins to consume his mind. He looks at the food, then back at the woman he intended to give his life to. Is this angel truly weaving a shroud for him? Every time Vivian steps closer, Julian feels his breathing grow heavier, not because of asthma, but because of the presence of death wearing the face of his lover. Survival instinct begins to claw its way up, screaming in the silence. He doesn't puff, he doesn't sip, he doesn't eat. He only watches, Watches the way Vivian's eyes narrow ever so slightly when she sees him set the inhaler back on the table. That is the moment of truth. A brutal reality emerging from behind a perfect mask. This mental chess match has shifted to a new phase where every breath is a gamble with fate. The angel has fallen, and now the hunt officially begins within every gasping breath of suspicion. Do not blink, for even the smallest movement could be the start of an empire's collapse or the end of a life. The venom has been sprayed, and it isn't just in the inhaler. It is in the very trust that has just shattered into 1,000 pieces. The screen plunges into the cold gray tones of concrete walls deep underground, where sunlight never dares to reach. This is the heart of the Briggs Empire. A secret bunker buried beneath the earth, completely severed from the artificial luxury above. Julian stands in the shadows, his face sliced by a sliver of dim light, revealing the fierce determination of a man who has just stepped back from the edge of the grave. Opposite him, in cleaning scrubs still stained with dust, stands Imani. The silence between them is thick, heavy, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of a countdown clock on the wall. Do you see the third man standing in the corner's embrace? That is Marcus, a replica of Julian so perfect it is terrifying, from his stride and his breath down to every tiny scar on his wrist. Slowly, Julian steps forward, staring at the duplicate of himself as if looking into a mirror reflecting his own destiny. Are you ready to die in my place? The question rings out, cold and bone-dry. Julian is no longer the naive billionaire of yesterday. Vivian's betrayal has forged him into a predator. Imani steps forward, holding a remote control device. She doesn't speak of loyalty, she speaks of tactics. Vivian won't stop at the inhaler. She will strike during dinner tonight. Marcus will sit in that chair. He will be the one to die, so that Julian can live to strip the mask off that serpent. Julian clenches his fists, a surge of loathing rising as he thinks of the woman he once intended to give his entire life to. How could love transform into such a brutal, murderous arrangement? Every tiny detail is calculated with the precision of open-heart surgery. Marcus practices the way his hand will tremble when he uses the inhaler. He learns how to collapse with the most haunting realism onto the stone floor. This is no longer a common play. This is a life-and-death covert order. The real Julian will stand behind a one-way mirror, watching his own fiancée celebrate over his corpse. A painful, searing awakening. Can you feel the chill radiating from these concrete blocks? It is the frost of vengeance being nurtured in the dark. Imani checks the final hidden camera on Marcus's lapel. Her eyes meet Julian's, a wordless empathy between two souls abandoned by the high society. This switch is the final card to turn the tide. A fake billionaire to catch a fake love? Operation Marcus has been activated, and from this second on, the line between the living and the dead is nothing more than a thin layer of makeup. Do not breathe too loudly, for in this bunker, every plan is being etched in blood and tears. The truth is about to be exposed under candlelight, and when night falls, the victor will realize they have only just stepped into a grave they dug for themselves. The final battle has begun from the darkest corner of the soul. The flickering candlelight casts distorted, long shadows against the gold-leafed walls of the grand banquet hall. The air is heavy with the suffocating scent of white lilies, a fragrance more suited for a funeral than a romantic dinner. Marcus, in the perfect likeness of Julian, sits across from Vivian. He raises a wine glass, his hands trembling slightly, strictly following the script of an exhausted asthma sufferer. Vivian sits there, radiant in a dress as crimson as fresh blood, her eyes never wavering from Marcus's every move. Slowly, Marcus places a piece of the seared foie gras into his mouth. Did you catch that fleeting smirk on Vivian's angelic face? That is the exact moment she believes she has won. Only seconds later, the air seems to be sucked out of the room. Marcus begins to gasp, a dry, rasping wheeze tearing from his throat. He reaches for the asthma inhaler on the table, but his uncontrolled hands knock it away. Marcus lunges forward. His entire body begins to convulse violently, the tremors radiating from his bone marrow to the surface of his skin. Crack! A Meiji porcelain plate worth a fortune shatters under the weight of the collapsing body. The pristine white shards fly everywhere, embedding themselves into the velvet carpet like frozen tears. Red wine spills over, mingling with the fragments to create a scene of chaotic mourning. Vivian stands up not to help, but to savor the spectacle. She watches Marcus writhing on the floor, watches the expensive porcelain turn to dust, and in her eyes, it is the music of liberation. Marcus's convulsions slow down, his breath becomes jagged, then fades into a terrifying silence. Why does the death of a man who once loved her with all his soul make this woman smile with such satisfaction? Vivian steps forward, her sharp stiletto heel crushing a broken porcelain shard underfoot. This coldness is beyond all imagination. The real Julian, standing behind the mirror wall, feels his heart being squeezed. He is witnessing himself die. He is watching the woman he once loved dance upon his grave. Porcelain can be replaced, but once trust is broken, only jagged slivers remain to pierce the soul. The curtain has fallen on the feast, but not in the way Vivian thinks. This is not the end of Julian, but the beginning of a demon's downfall. Do not blink, because in the shadows of this room, the truth is preparing to rise from the wreckage, colder and more ruthless than any dose of poison. The curtain falls for a body double, but it opens the gates of hell for the culprit. Everything has shattered, and from those fragments, the most horrific revenge in the history of the Briggs Empire is officially ignited. The silence enveloping the banquet hall now, amidst the wreckage of porcelain and wine, staring at corpsing at a contract, as if looking at a contract that was just successfully executed, she does not shed a single tear. Slowly, Vivian pulls a phone from handbag, her long, slender fingers gliding across the screen with a calmness that is bone-chilling. Can you hear the lonely, long dial tone echoing through this mournful space? The other end connects. Vivian speaks, her voice no longer holding a trace of fake sweetness, but instead sounding as cold as thin ice in a deep cellar. It is done, she says. A brief affirmation that contains an unspeakable crime. The little mouse swallowed the bait. Julian Briggs is officially history. The real Julian, standing behind the mirrored wall, feels every cell in his body trembling with pure rage. He hears her laugh, a dry, hollow sound echoing throughout the empty room. Do not worry about the police. This toxin will vanish from the blood before they can even perform an autopsy. A stroke is a clean enough story. Vivian walks past Marcus's body, her sharp heels avoiding the red wine puddles as if afraid of staining her magnificent dress. 40% of the corporation's shares are now in our pockets. I have waited 8 long months just to see this moment. Love? He was so naive to think that someone like me would ever love a weak rich boy who only knows how to lean on his father's legacy. I had to endure his breath, his suffocating care, just to trade it for this power. Vivian stops before the window, looking down at the glittering lights of Chicago, where she believes she is about to become queen. Why does greed turn a human being into such a cold, emotionless killing machine? She confesses everything, every detail of the plot, every name of the accomplices in the shadows, never knowing that every word is being recorded by Imani's state-of-the-art security system. Her triumph is a lethal illusion. Vivian takes a deep breath, the scent of white lilies now smelling like victory to her. Everything is set. Tomorrow morning the world will mourn a short-lived billionaire, and we will pop champagne on the ashes of the Briggs Empire. She hangs up, and an absolute silence returns. Vivian does not know that behind that mirror, the eyes of Julian and Imani are watching her like a predator, watching a creature that has already stepped into its own grave. The final confession has been uttered, and it is the irreversible death sentence for the fallen angel. Do not look away, because the play is only just beginning to turn to its final page, where the one who just admitted to the crime is about to face a reality more horrific than death itself. The truth has been exposed, slimy and full of venom, right within the self-satisfied breath of the murderer. The screen suddenly vibrates with a sound that tears through the air. Rip, it is the sound of coarse fabric being shredded apart. Vivian spins around, her eyes widening in sheer terror as she witnesses a transformation unlike any in the history of the Briggs Manor. Imani, the woman whose hand she had crushed just minutes ago, is stripping away the grime-stained deep blue cleaning scrubs. Beneath that lowly shell, a mysterious black silk evening gown emerges, hugging the powerful and elegant silhouette of a queen. Do you see the crystal light reflecting off her strong, bare shoulders? Imani steps out of the shadows, no longer bowing, no longer submissive. Her eyes burn with the cold fire of justice, making the air around Vivian feel thin and suffocate. Slowly, Imani pulls away the cheap hair tie, letting her jet black hair fall like a proud waterfall. The game is over, Vivian. Her voice is no longer a whisper, it is as ironclad as a funeral bell, but the true horror is only beginning. On the floor, amidst the broken porcelain and pools of red wine, Marcus's corpse suddenly twitches. A deep, sharp intake of breath shatters the deadly atmosphere. Marcus comes back to life. He sits up amidst the wreck, wiping a smear of wine from the corner of his mouth and looking directly into Vivian's eyes with a mocking smile. Can you hear the scream choking in the murderer's throat? Vivian stumbles back, her trembling legs tripping over the very chair where she sat in triumph just moments ago. How is this possible? Marcus stands lightly brushing the dust off his expensive suit, every movement radiating a terrifying vitality. Your poison is quite good, but it wasn't faster than our preparation. Imani steps forward to stand beside Marcus, forming an unbreakable pincer of justice. This transformation isn't just about clothes, it is the resurrection of souls that were once held in contempt. Why was Vivian so blind to believe that money could shroud the truth forever? She stares at the janitor, who is now more magnificent and commanding than herself, and at the dead man standing tall like a god of vengeance. Every passing second is a knife twisting into the culprit's arrogance. Vivian realizes she was never the player. She was merely a puppet in a play staged by those she considered trash. The night of the Briggs estate no longer belongs to betrayal, it belongs to awakening. The truth is exploding like a storm, tearing away the angelic mask to reveal the face of a demon trembling before the light. Do not blink, for when the underdog casts off their disguise, that is the moment the empire of lies begins to crumble under the weight of shattered pride. The role reversal is complete, and now hell opens its gates to welcome the guest who just confessed. The crystal chandeliers suddenly flicker out and then burst back to life. But this time they are drowned by the swirling red and blue glare of police sirens flashing outside the great windows. The heavy doors of the banquet hall are thrown open. Stepping out from the darkness is not a ghost, but Julian Briggs himself, in the flesh. His appearance is like a blade piercing through the heart of Vivian's hallucination. Do you see her face? It is no longer the face of an angel, but a heap of ash and pure terror. Her crimson lips tremble, stuttering meaningless sounds as Julian approaches, each footstep as heavy as a gavel slamming down on a death sentence. Slowly, very slowly, Julian stops directly in front of the woman he once wanted to give his heart to, looking into the venomous eyes that now hold nothing but desperation. I am still alive, Vivian, and I heard everything. Your confession, your pride over the body of an innocent man. Behind him, police officers surge in like an unstoppable tide. The sharp, dry click of handcuffs rings through the room, a sound marking the end of a criminal empire. Vivian begins to struggle. She screams, her perfect hair now disheveled, her hands clawing frantically at the air as if trying to grasp at the last slivers of vanishing power. Let me go. You have no proof. I am the mistress of this house. But Imani silently raises her phone, the screen displaying a razor-sharp video recording every second of her poisoning the inhaler and that sickening confession call. Justice is no longer a distant concept. It is embodied in Julian's cold stare and Imani's calm resolve. Why do people trade their souls for stock market numbers only to end up in a cold prison cell? Vivian collapses onto the carpet, still scattered with the broken porcelain shards of her own life. Despair wraps around her like a steel net. Every struggle only tightens the rope of fate. Julian looks down at the person who was once his whole world, no longer with hatred, but with an utter, hollow emptiness. The hunter has finally fallen into her own trap. Do not look away. For the moment the culprit is dragged away in shame is the moment true light returns to the Briggs estate. The play is over, the mask is shattered, and now only the naked truth remains under the light of justice that never dims. Justice may arrive late, but when it appears, it crushes every lie beneath the heel of the truth. As dawn breaks, the first rays of light pierce through the Chicago mist, illuminating a banquet hall that is now nothing but the wreckage of greed. Julian stands there in the middle of his kingdom, but his eyes follow a figure fading into the distance. Imani. She accepts no million-dollar checks and demands no glamorous rewards. Slowly, she reaches down to pick up her worn-out broom, the only thing that truly belongs to her, and walks toward the grand exit. Do you see the way she walks? It is not the stride of a servant finishing a shift, but the pride of a soul that is finally free. Imani pauses at the threshold, the boundary between the castle's darkness and the light of a new life. She turns back, leaving behind a sentence that shakes the entire empire. Money can build high walls, but it can never buy a peaceful night's sleep. The lesson here is simple yet devastating. Never judge a person by what they own. Judge them by how they treat those who have nothing in their hands. True wealth is not found in a bank balance, but in the integrity of one's soul. Imani's old broom didn't just sweep away dust. It swept away the venom of deception, reminding us of the value of our roots and self-respect. Why do we chase after shallow vanity only to lose our human essence? As Imani vanishes into the light, the Briggs estate is finally cleansed. A new life begins with the act of letting go. Remember, a real crown is forged from character, not from diamonds or blood. The truth has won, and now only the serenity of a soul that chose the right path remains. Do not let money blind you, because in the end, the only thing that stays with you is the kindness you gave away. Standing among the cold, lifeless marble pillars, Julian suddenly realizes that true power does not lie in commanding others, but in the ability to master oneself against dark temptations. Vivian possessed the most precious jewelry, yet her soul was more tattered and impoverished than anyone's. Conversely, Imani leaves empty-handed, yet the entire world seems to reside within her heart. Life is a mirror reflecting exactly what we sow. If you sow contempt, you will reap loneliness even within your own palace. If you sow compassion, you will find an escape, even when standing in the darkest tunnel. This world does not lack wealthy people, but it lacks noble souls. Choose to live so that when night falls, what warms you is not a cold stack of cash, but the warmth of a clear conscience. Imani's journey is a reminder that no matter who you are or what you do, human dignity is a priceless treasure that no one has the right to strip away. Hold fast to your faith, stay true to yourself, and justice will always find its way back to those who deserve it most.